climate change solutions, or I can do a presentation about how climate change affects biodiversity. So I think I would kind of rather go with the biodiversity one. If anyone wants to give me their preference, I'm open to suggestions. If not, I'll get started on the presentation that I have. And I see Valerie is starting, so once she... Okay, biodiversity. It is to me too. Biodiversity is always my subject, so I'll switch over, and if we have any questions, Deb, please send me an email and I'll switch back over. And so first thing I want to do is say thanks. I'll kind of be reading along here as I go, so forgive me if I look back and forth. Thanks for inviting me to present here. It's really pretty exciting for me to present in the National Biodiversity Teach-In. Hopefully it's my first of many. If it's all right, I'll talk a little bit about myself first, introduce myself. My interest in biodiversity and all things nature started when I was young. My parents bought an encyclopedia set, a huge encyclopedia set with all types of animals and plants from all over the world, and I was fascinated. I think they bought that when I was 6 years old or so. And when I was 10, we moved to a house with a forest in the backyard with marshy area, and it was just, my fascination grew. So I was fortunate enough to have a forest that I could walk in all day long and not see another person, day after day, anytime I wanted, right out the back door. So the forest back then was full of frogs and salamanders and all kinds of deer and skunks and all kinds of animals. I'm from upstate New York, where holy smokes, what is that? Hang on a second, I got something going in the background here. Sorry about that. So I'm also very familiar with winter. I know you people in Illinois and everyone are familiar with the winters, the way winters used to be. And one of the things when I talk about climate change, a lot of people are still skeptical about climate change, and they say, well, what's so convincing to you about it? And I always, my first default answer is, I grew up in what we considered a traditional winter, and it was below freezing. Where I grew up, it went below freezing in November, and it didn't get back above freezing until March. Once every couple of years, we'd have a day or two above freezing, but it was never like it is now. I mean, the winters have obviously changed. I'm a big fan of snow. One of the hashtags that I use on Twitter, I am pro snow, and I was lucky enough to work on Whiteface Mountain in the Adirondack Mountains a couple of years ago, and actually get to make snow. You can see this is one of the ski runs that I worked on. So I'll fast forward through living in and raising a family up in upstate New York. And I was fortunate in 2006, a combination of an accident at work. I was working as a high voltage lineman, and kind of a stroke of good luck led me to the work that I do now as in the business of helping socially responsible and climate change businesses raise money for their businesses. There's, they call it eco entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs. There's a whole class of business people coming up, into the world now that are focusing their lives on protecting the planet for us and protecting biodiversity for future generations. And my business, Clime-IT.com, Clime-IT LLC, is a business that's focused. It's the third iteration of my business. I've been involved in the past in a profitable system for replanting tropical rainforests. And that evolved through a couple of iterations into the business that I'm in the process of launching now, which is an equity crowdfunding platform specifically for climate change solutions. If most people are familiar with Kickstarter or Indiegogo or that sort of those websites that are designed to help people raise money for them, for projects or for themselves. This is a similar business that allows businesses that are raising capital for themselves to post online and find investors on the internet. So we can talk more about that later. A few weeks ago, before a couple of weeks ago, I was putting together this presentation, and on June 14th or January 14th, about 5 weeks ago, I ended up in the hospital and I was diagnosed with a rare form of kidney cancer. And this is my wife Annie and I. You can tell I don't look too shook up about it. She's obviously very shook up about the entire thing. And that kind of changed my perspective a little bit. It changed the presentation that I was putting together for the biodiversity teach-in. And it really, I guess, like so many other people that, that when they get diagnosed with cancer, it really changes your perception about things. Originally the presentation that I was going to I was putting together for you guys was simply biodiversity and climate change. And now I'm expanding this presentation into something that I'm probably going to be doing on radio shows and speaking engagements. And it's evolving into a presentation that I'm calling Healing the Planet One Tree at a Time: Cancer, Quantum Physics, and Climate Change. And we'll get into we won't talk much about the cancer. We'll talk a little bit about the quantum physics a little bit later in the presentation. But climate change really is the focus of my life, addressing climate change and helping businesses that are working on solutions to climate change. Anyone who follows me on social media knows that my nickname is Tree Banker. So the idea of calling my presentation Healing the Planet One Tree at a Time there's a metaphor mixed in there. So as we move forward, let me see, like I said, we'll talk about quantum physics a little bit later. People who've been studying climate change for a while are familiar with the idea that humanity has been compared to a cancer on the planet Earth. Not all humans, obviously, not all of humanity, but when you understand the definition of what cancer cells are, it's part of a body that consumes more resources than the host can regenerate. So if you look at all of the living species, all the plants and animals on the planet, and you look at the ones that are causing climate change, that are actually risking the entire planet, it's just a small number of the species on the planet that are causing problems. So we're actually consuming more of the planet's resources than the planet can support. So the analogy of cancer with climate change actually fits quite well. When I was first diagnosed, the first thing I do, since I'm an avid reader, first thing my wife and I did was go to the bookstore. Went to Barnes & Noble, found all the books that we could find about it, and two books that jumped out immediately at me were a book by Deepak Chopra called Quantum Healing, which I'm a fan of quantum physics, and anything that can tie my love of quantum physics with the idea of healing my body was kind of a no-brainer for me. And then a book by Dr. Kelly Turner called Radical Remission, where she, for her, I guess her thesis for her PhD, she studied thousands of cancer survivors all around the planet. And she distilled her research down into this book that has the 9 key factors that all of these thousands of people who cured themselves of cancer all incorporated into their lives in different degrees. So as I read through that, and my mind is always on climate change, in the business of climate change, of addressing climate change, I immediately started putting together all of these 9 criteria, which we'll get to at the end of the presentation. Those 9 criteria are the things that I think we need to incorporate into our society in order to essentially save the planet, to create a healthy planet for future generations, which is our goal. So I'm sure everyone who studies biodiversity knows that we're in the midst of what's referred to as the 6th extinction period. They have a name for it. They're calling it it's punctuated by what they're calling massive mortality events around the planet. More species have become extinct in the last couple hundred years than in thousands of years prior to this. And even in only the 21st century, so far, 14 different types of animals have actually gone extinct because of destruction of their habitat and other causes tied to climate change. Around the globe, there's a number of these massive mortality events that are being tied directly to climate change. This is an image of a flock of birds, a huge flock of birds in just this year in January of 2016 that died. Where is it here? Off of Alaska, and they're attributing that directly to climate change because when they looked at these birds, they found that they had all starved to death. And what the researchers are speculating is the fact that the fish that these birds normally eat have migrated north to stay in the water temperature that they're comfortable with. They've migrated further north to stay in the colder water, and the birds stayed in their same nesting areas, and they starved to death. There was no food. The fish that they feed on had all gone away, and the birds weren't able to adapt to that change quickly enough. There was nothing for them to eat. Another great example of climate change is these saga antelope in Russia and Mongolia, where they were already a threatened species. And what happened in here just recently, it doesn't have the date on here, but the spring of 2016, these sagas had were caught with a combination of circumstances that a what's normally a harmless bacteria that lives in the soil and on the grass that they feed on and inside their digestive system. For some reason, they're saying because of the heat, something about the hot temperatures that they've had in the area where these saga live has these bacteria changed and became toxic. So the bacteria were already inside the saga, and they all became sick because of the toxins that this bacteria started giving off inside their digestive system. At the same time that was happening to them, they were falling ill with this, the toxins in their systems. There was an early warm up in where they live, an early spring, and they lost all of their winter coat. Their bodies obviously were tuned to losing their winter fur based on the temperature, and when the temperature came up, they shed their winter fur, and then the temperature dropped again, like it happens around here. You know, we're all getting kind of familiar with the idea of one day it's 10 degrees outside and 2 days later it's 50 degrees outside. Well, the same thing happened where these antelope live, was 50 degrees-ish for a couple of days, enough for them to lose their coat, and then it snapped back down cold enough that it stressed the animals. The combination of that and the sickness that they were having from that bacteria caused half of the remaining saga to perish. So it's a sad story that is already, you know, that they tied directly to climate change. And these what's happening is researchers are finding all around, these graphs show on the mortality rate through the years, and what's happening is, you know, it's being recorded all over the planet that amphibians and reptiles, invertebrates, fish, mammals, and birds are all going through these massive die-offs all over the planet. And a lot of it is being tied directly to climate change. For everyone who studies, you know, that studies biodiversity and frogs and amphibians, it's common knowledge that that frogs are dying off all over the planet. When I was a kid, you know, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, when I was a kid back in the early 70s and mid 70s, frogs were everywhere. In my backyard, we go, you know, at night in the middle of summer, it was deafening listening to the frogs. It was just, you know, we got used to it, but it was always there. And now in the summertime up there, it's rare to hear any frogs, and that's happening. It's happening all over the planet. Another big problem that has been in the news lately is the issue with bees. Now, the problem with honeybees is not so much climate change, but it's man-made. A couple of different issues are man-made. The use of, excuse me, the use of different herbicides that farmers put on their plants. It's a class of herbicide that's called neonicotinoids that they spread on the ground, and the plants absorb this herbicide and pesticide into the body of the plant. And when the bees come to pollinate the plant and eat the nectar, bring the nectar back to the hive and eat the nectar, they're being poisoned by this type of fertilizer. There's also this virus. In this picture, there's you can see that this bee's wings are deformed, and it's actually a virus that's being spread among the bees by a type of mite. It's a tiny little mite, and I wish I had a picture of it, but I should have. I don't have a picture of the mite. I saw some, but unfortunately I didn't grab those pictures. That's being transmitted among the bees, and it's actually causing a big problem. A lot of beehives are dying off in the wintertime, and it's actually becoming a big issue for us because a lot of the food that we all eat, that we're all accustomed to eating and finding in the grocery stores, are pollinated by bees. So if the honeybee population worldwide collapses, we're all going to have a big change in our diet. It's, you know, a lot of this is going to change. Sometimes the solutions to climate change. This is an image of, you know, what most people consider clean energy, hydroelectric energy, but the idea of moving away from dirty energy, coal energy, and fossil fuel energy to clean energy, hydroelectric, and solar and wind can also stress biodiversity. As you know, like you can imagine in this picture, you know, it used to be a free-flowing river through here with all the animals and plants that would live in the river and on the edges of the river. When they block off the river, all of that, you know, we lose all of that, all of those species. They either have to find another place to live, or they just perish, and we lose entire species like that in some places where they indiscriminately put up hydroelectric dams. Some of the solutions that are causing problems, it seemed like a great idea, is generating electricity through these this type of I forget what they call it, solar collection, where you can see in the image all of these mirrors are designed to reflect the sunlight toward that column in the middle of the array. And what they realized once they built it, without giving it much thought until they built this type of system, was that birds flying through the array are caught in the energy in that concentrated light, and it kills the birds. The story that I captured this image from, you know, like it says, there's no secret that solar power is hot right now, but the last thing you would expect is, you know, for it to be killing birds. And while they were doing this study, they counted nearly 130 birds killed in mid-flight as they fly through the array. So some of the solutions, excuse me. So even as we're trying to, you know, save the planet, if you will, with renewable energy, unfortunately, some of the renewable energy has a detrimental effect on biodiversity. Some of the skeptics of renewable energy are trying to claim, especially like wind energy, they say that it has, you know, it kills birds. Well, the Climate Reality Project, if you're not familiar with them, that's the organization that's led by Al Gore, the former vice president. They did a study on whether or not wind turbines were actually killing birds, like the skeptics say, and they found that it's not really true. It's just some talking points that climate change skeptics, are using to dissuade people away from adopting wind energy. One of the problems with that we're also finding with climate change and its effect on biodiversity is the fact that climate change also allows dangerous species to thrive and change in, like the example that we used with the saga a few minutes ago, is a type of bacteria that the saga have been consuming. It's been in their, in the soil that they live in for who knows how long. The change in the temperature has turned them into a toxic substance, and it's changing. Climate change and the change in the temperature is actually changing the way a number of different species interact with their hosts and in their environment. The story that I pulled this image up from is that parasites around the world are changing the way they move between hosts and the way they interact with their hosts. And this is another example similar to the saga, that these soil transmitted parasites in the guts of rabbits is actually allowing these parasites that used to have, they weren't as dangerous to the rabbits in the past, but now climate change is changing that, and they're actually starting to kill off their hosts. And one example that's making the news right now is the Zika virus. The Zika virus was was only located in a small part of South America for who knows how long, for decades. And then now climate change, it's expected that climate change is allowing the mosquitoes to live longer and broaden out their habitat and spread all across South and Central America, and it's causing real problems for the people that live there, and especially women, pregnant women. If you're following in the news, you're seeing that it's causing really tragic birth defects in babies born to women who are infected with the Zika virus. So scientists now are tracking the movement of that virus, and they're looking at the temperature changes around the countries to see if they can predict how the Zika virus is moving around. Oh, I need to go back up here. For me, as someone who's studied climate change and who's focused on restoring biodiversity, it's restoring biodiversity. It's great for me to see the media and journalists finally starting to talk about the fact that restoring biodiversity in areas like deforested areas in the rainforest and in areas like that could actually be a key to protecting the planet from climate change. It's kind of a simple idea for me to, if you've ever been in a forest, everyone who's ever been standing in a field and then walk on the very edge of a forest and walk 100 feet or so into a thick forest like a tropical rainforest, you can feel the temperature drop dramatically just from the shade, and the air is different, and it's so much cooler. So, I believe a big part of climate change is simply the fact that there is so much land that has been deforested around the planet, that now is absorbing sunlight, and it's warming the planet because it simply doesn't have the shade. Um, there's a lot of talk with the this last COP21 meeting in Paris. There's finally talk about the role of forests in the fight against climate change. The simple fact that trees store carbon, they filter carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and so there's no downside to planting trees. And I've never seen a tree like this, so that's why I captured this picture. This huge tree in New Zealand. It's a massive tree trunk. I wish we could see the top of the tree to get an idea. So I might later look at this, the Karai. I think it's a Karai tree in New Zealand, and get a better idea of what the tree looks like, the entire tree looks like, instead of just a trunk. Because I've spent some time in the redwood forests out west, and the great sequoias, and they're amazing, just incredible trees. So I'm curious to know more about this one. There, as in my business, I'm focused on nature-based solutions, helping businesses that are doing massive reforestation projects. A friend of mine in Indonesia, they've planted since 2011, so in 5 years, they've planted 16 million trees. And they came to me to ask if I could help them find investors to enlarge their operations. So if these guys have planted 16 million trees, I'd like to help them quadruple that. So and copy the model that they're using in different places around the world. These guys have obviously developed a really good system for planting trees, and they employ a lot of people. It seems like a great project. We should recently this professor at Clemson University said that we should continue to actively promote protection of old growth as well as promote natural forest regeneration. Well, I believe that just fencing off and allowing forests to grow back naturally is a good way to go if you have a forest that is already in the process of seeding itself and growing. But I also believe that in a lot of areas, we can go in and replant forests with an eye toward biodiversity, not just monoculture. You plant all one type of tree and it's not a forest anymore. It has to be done systematically, and we have some really good business models for doing that. Part of my there's another image of the rainforest, and it's another story on The Guardian about theguardian.com about the solution to melting polar ice caps maybe hiding in the rainforests. And it's the same idea, protecting and replanting tropical rainforests in order to absorb the greenhouse gases that are warming the planet and melting the ice caps. At the same time, we're really starting to find that nature has a way of correcting itself. If you leave, there's been a number of shows on television about what would happen if all the people left. How long would it take nature to return, to reclaim the land back into a natural state? When you look at some of the big cities in Mexico, these big ancient cities that, like the Inca and the Aztecs, and they've only been abandoned for a couple hundred years, and they're already completely overgrown with rainforest. So, the planet has its own healing mechanism that, if left to its own, if we stop essentially poisoning it, the planet will heal itself. But we have to stop. We have to stop continuing to pollute it in order to give it a chance to heal itself. There's something in, we mentioned a little while ago about quantum physics. One of the theories of quantum physics about how it applies to us, to humanity, and to nature is the fact that in our DNA there is a memory of what a healthy planet looks like. There's a memory in that, in our collective DNA, in our collective consciousness, of what a healthy planet looks like and feels like. There's, depending on your belief system, there have been people on the planet and our life on the planet for somewhere between 6,000 and 3.5 billion years. And we've really only started converting the planet and poisoning the planet to the point where it's sick enough that we're starting to notice it in the last 250 years. So when this story here, it was such a great example of the fact that, these salmon who only live to be a few years old, these salmon have never been up this river. They removed the dam, and there's a memory in the DNA of these fish that have never seen this river, but their ancestors swam up this river, and they're returning now that the hydroelectric dams are gone. The fish are returning to this spot. So I believe that we have, and all of nature has a memory of a healthy planet in it, and that we are, not only are we a part of the problem, kind of like the renewable energy example that I used, that it cuts both ways. It can either be part of the solution, it can also be part of the problem. And I believe that humanity, even though we're obviously part of the problem, a big part of the problem on the planet right now because of our effect in our causing global warming and climate change, we also are we're also the solution. We have to, the only way the planet is going to heal fast enough is if we work together to change our ways and to help heal the planet. Which brings me full circle back around to entrepreneurialism and eco-entrepreneurialism. And I know that we had spoken, Debbie Perryman and I had spoken on the phone about the fact that there are a lot of kids nowadays that are talking about getting involved in a business that helps, social enterprise, doing the type of work that helps humanity and helps the planet. And I'm so proud to be a part of that and working with those people. I can't imagine a better type of business for myself than rubbing elbows with, getting to meet and getting to help people whose hearts are firmly set on helping the planet and helping heal the planet. Help them launch their businesses. And there are also investors who are very concerned about what's going on with the planet right now. but they don't know where to go to find the entrepreneurs that they relate to, that they can trust. So my business, I've put myself in the middle between those people. I help entrepreneurs, eco-entrepreneurs, structure their businesses so that they're ready to raise capital for themselves and they have the best chance of success once they launch their businesses. And I help the investors, like I said a minute ago, I help the investors find businesses that have the best chance of succeeding so they can get a return on their investment. And as I mentioned earlier, in the books that I found for my own healing and the concepts that are in those books, I was able to, as I read through these books, I immediately see the connections between how people have healed themselves from incredibly from being incredibly sick, having terminal cancer and being sent home and told just, go home and die, to healing themselves. And this woman, Kelly Turner, she broke it down by these 9 criteria. And I think they translate perfectly into the things that we need to do to heal the planet. Radically change our diet. Food production in our modern agriculture is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas, and it's also one of the biggest destroyers of biodiversity on the planet right now. Palm oil. If anyone is paying attention to the news in Indonesia right now, they are just mowing down rainforests to plant one specific monocrop of palm oil trees because there is such a huge demand for that palm oil. It's in almost everything that you buy in the grocery store, that we buy in a regular grocery store nowadays. And they're destroying the habitat of really threatened animals like orangutans and tigers in Indonesia, and it's just the rainforest in general and all the biodiversity that you find in rainforests. So in order for us to have a healthy planet, we're going to have to rethink the way we eat, the way we feed ourselves. Taking control of our health, the health of our planet. It can be kind of cliche to say that the greed of a handful of people are directing our choices. They're the ones that buy all the commercial time and tell us to consume, what to drink, what shows to watch, what clothes to wear. And the majority of those messages have absolutely no sense of protecting the planet. It's really all about making profits for themselves. And in order for us to heal the planet and leave a healthy planet for future generations, we as individuals are going to have to make the decisions ourselves that we want to be a part of the solution, that we aren't just going to buy what we're told to buy on television and through all the different marketing schemes, and we're going to have to take responsibility for it ourselves. Following our intuition, that's one of the ones that sometimes it's a little hard to translate that into healing the planet. But I think that if you substituted the word our conscience instead of intuition, when you have, when you're focused on helping heal the planet, it really comes down to your intuition says turn off the light switches, turn the thermostat down a little bit. Instead of jumping in the car, maybe let's ride the bicycle to go do something. The more you focus on being part of the solution, the more little choices you'll make that you actually become part of the solution. So I believe that our intuition speaks to us when we focus on our ultimate goal, what we really want, what's most important to us in life. The fourth one, using herbs and supplements. That one I had to kind of stretch my mind a little bit about how we could use that to heal the planet. That's something that people, which I've done with part of my cancer treatment, is change my diet, and I'm using different types of herbs and supplements to help build my immune system. So probably the best example that I've come up with for helping it heal the planet is part of the immune system for the planet are the forests or the rainforests. And in order for us to be able to go back and replant these areas in the rainforest, which the rainforest has very poor soil for growing plants in. It seems kind of counterintuitive. You would think the rainforest, with all its lush vegetation, must have incredibly fertile soil. But the truth is it doesn't. And that's why slash and burn method of cutting down rainforests in order to plant grazing land or to plant crops in is such a bad idea, because what actually happens is once you cut the trees down, there's only an inch or two of good soil, because all of that biodiversity and plant life in the rainforest, as soon as a tree falls over, a tree dies, or a leaf falls off a tree, it is immediately gobbled up, if you will, by the other organisms, the other plants, before it has time to soak into the ground. So what happens is in these rainforest areas, they cut all the trees down. They take out the best trees that are worth the most. They they burn off the rest of the brush, and they'll plant crops, and the soil will always support crops or grazing for 2 or 3 years. And then they move on to another plot of land and do the same thing, cut out the best trees, sell those trees, burn off the rest, and start planting or grazing their cattle again. And they leave behind these huge, huge patches, thousands and millions of acres of soil that's completely depleted. So to come full circle, in order to restore the health of the planet, we need to introduce supplements, if you will, into the soil in order to make it healthy enough to support life at first, to support healthy grasses, to support trees, and start planting trees in it. So I think that's an important part, since the replanting of the rainforest is such an important part of restoring the health of the planet. I can see that we're going to need to use some supplements, if you will, in order to replant those areas. Releasing suppressed emotions. A big part of the problem right now on the planet is, if you watch any news, is the anger that has built up between people. And in order for us to heal the planet on a physical level, we're also going to have to do it on an emotional level to some extent. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to do that, but I just, I can see that it's something that we are going to have to do. We're going to have to figure out a way to do that. Increasing positive emotions. This is a part that these two kind of go together in my mind. Increasing positive emotions is a part of when people are doing the work that they love, they're almost automatically more cheerful, they're happier about themselves, they're happier about their lives. And especially if you're doing work that you know is benefiting other people, and you know it's benefiting the planet at large, um, that automatically increases positive emotions and positive interactions between people. So I think that that's just kind of a given um, among the people who are focused on protecting the planet and healing the planet. Embracing social support. This is a huge one in the industry that I work in. Um, a lot of people don't realize that climate change scientists are really struggling with um, the fact that so many people in society are either oblivious to people in society, are either oblivious to how dangerous climate change really is, or they're actively in denial about how bad it is. And without being any more of a fearmonger than I know I come across as sometimes, the situation really is dire. The climate change, the fear now is that if we don't change our ways, if we don't stop pumping so many greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, that the planet could actually be unable to support life, human life, within just a couple hundred more years. And the the people who were working on climate change, the science of it, and making these projections are actually getting clinically depressed about the fact that so many people in the world um, are either actively denying them, trolling them. I deal with a lot of trolling on Twitter and on Facebook. And the we need a way to support each other socially. We need a way so that we don't all feel like islands out in this giant ocean of the planet. And that's actually a part of a proposal that I put together for Boulder, Colorado. They're looking for a way to knit all of the people who are working on climate change together in one place. So I recently submitted a proposal for that through the Climate Collab at MIT, where through social media, we're creating a website where all of these different experts and entrepreneurs and conscious investors can all come together to support each other and get to know each other and support each other socially, so that people don't feel alone in this fight against this huge monster of climate change. Deepening spiritual connection. Now, this is kind of a slippery slope when you start talking about spirituality with people, because some people are easily offended by religion, talking about religion and spirituality. But I think that one of the things when everybody looks at it, they agree that when people when they make their spiritual connection a priority in their lives, they actually get calmer and clearer on what they need to do and more optimistic. So whether your spiritual connection is through a religion that you practice or through a walk in the woods, if your spiritual connection, if you feel connected by just being in nature, whatever system you use to feel that spiritual connection, if you make that a priority in your life, it improves your lives in ways that I guess maybe they aren't as tangible to some people, but they're real to the people who can feel it. And I believe that that's something that we as a human family will have to do in order to heal and the planet and save the planet for future generations. And the last one is having a strong reason for living. In the book about cancer survivors, the majority of people who healed themselves of terminal cancer and really came through with a strong reason for living, whether it's their family or unfinished business of whatever, of some sort. That strong reason for living, I think that, we as a family, as a human family, have that, a strong reason for living. Just once we realize that we don't have a choice, we're fast approaching the time when we have no choice except to save the planet for future generations. So I guess let me back out of this here, give everybody a moment to kind of ponder that. And I'm going to check the time here. Wow, that's almost exactly an hour. Wow, and I couldn't see anything that anyone wrote. And I know Debbie was trying to send me emails that people were the thing. So there weren't very many comments, but in the last couple of minutes that we have left, if anyone wants to share anything or ask any questions, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really glad that without having a clock on the computer, it seems like I hit my my hour right on the money. So if anyone has anything to share or any questions to ask, I'm glad to answer questions, and I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, it really was. It's a great pleasure of mine to create this. I really enjoyed it. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff, or take exception, or suggestions for anything that I could add? Does it, does the stuff make sense to everyone? And I'm just kind of fishing for some kind of reply here, but like I said, I'm really happy to be able to share it. That's a good question. Debbie asked about when the MIT Climate CoLab, my proposal was submitted a couple of weeks ago, and now they're going through the process of fellows are going through the different proposals and getting back with us and tweaking the ideas around. And I'm not sure. I think within the next couple of weeks, we'll have more to present. And as soon as that happens, I'll be announcing all of that on Twitter and on Facebook and announcing to everyone. And I think I gave them exactly what they're looking for. My business model through climate really creates exactly what they're looking for. It's a great way to knit everyone together and create that social support. So, okay, we're right at 5 o'clock, and so thank you everybody for your interest and your time, and I really appreciate your interest in my work. Thanks.